We meet a lot of seasoned detectives on this program who've seen pretty much the worst that humans can do to each other, but every so often a case comes in that has the power to shock even them. Matthew takes up the story now of how one such crime was solved, the brutal murder of two young students in Newcastle.
The body found wrapped in a duvet was Ci Zhu, known as Cici. Her boyfriend, Zhen Zing Zang, known as Kevin, was also found dead in the flat. Both had been savagely murdered.
It was quite obvious from a very early stage that there were no obvious suspects and there were no great clues leaping at you from the very beginning.
Cici and Kevin were both 25. They'd come to the UK to study at Newcastle University, where they'd met. Both were planning to return to China. The autopsies indicated the couple had been killed 2 days before their bodies were discovered. It also revealed a disturbing picture of how the couple died and the sadism of their killer.
There was far more obvious violence than you're used to seeing even in a murder scene. There was a gag stuffed into her mouth, so she would have had extreme difficulty breathing. Kevin had received a large number of head injuries, in excess of 50.
With Cici having been strangled and Kevin seemingly tortured for a number of hours, detectives knew the man they were hunting was extremely dangerous.
At the crime scene, it was established that a laptop and mobile phones had been stolen, and there was yet more macabre discoveries. The couple's cat had been drowned and left in a bucket under the sink.
I've never known in 25 years burglars who kill pet cats, and then the combination of that and the injuries then made me begin to think this is more than a burglary gone wrong.
Just when the search teams thought the scene couldn't throw up any more surprises, they made another strange discovery.
There's something I think you should come and have a look at?
There was a pair of khaki coloured trousers, and they were a size 36-inch waist. Kevin was a 31-inch waist, so they quite clearly weren't Kevin's. And they were heavily blood-stained, and the distribution of the blood stain was suggestive that they were probably worn by the murderer.
The trousers were rushed off for urgent DNA analysis. Tests returned not only a full DNA profile of the wearer, but revealed the person they were looking for was also Chinese. The profile was run through both the UK and Chinese DNA databases, but there wasn't a match on either.
We had the probable profile of the murderer, but we didn't know who it was, and that's obviously where the hunt is on now, to try and identify the wearer of the trousers and who shed that DNA.
Detectives combed through Cici and Kevin's lives, studying their internet and phone usage, interviewing family and friends, and trawling through their finances, all in the hope it would give some clue as to who had killed them and why.
It became apparent that both Kevin and Cici were involved in an internet betting scam. I think over a 2 or 3 year period, I think something like £200,000 went through the accounts. But that's not to say that Cici and Kevin benefited from those sums of money. The murderer might not have known that. The murderer might have thought they were making substantial sums of cash out of that, and that could have been a motive for why they were killed.
Detectives also discovered that Cici and Kevin had advertised a room to rent a few weeks before they were killed.
And we know that on the evening before the murders took place, that Kevin had been in contact with his mum, and he'd suggested that they'd actually rented the room out to a lodger.
But if someone had moved in, who were they and where were they now? The search for the mystery lodger became the central focus of the investigation. Detectives turned to Crimewatch.
What we do know is Cici telephoned a friend days before the murder. She was uncomfortable with this Chinese lodger, very uncomfortable.
What police didn't know was a couple of days before the programme went out, a boy had found a plastic bag hidden half a mile from the murder scene. 2 days later, his family saw the Crimewatch appeal.
Won't get that mobile with the pictures on? I'll never forget it, to be quite honest with you. There was a young detective came through and said, boss, we think we've found the victim's mobile telephones. We discover a text message, and that text message was absolutely crucial to the investigation. The text message had been sent the evening before the murders, and it was a text message from Cici's phone to the lodger.
The lodger's phone was a pay-as-you-go, impossible to trace using the usual technology. So detectives turned to a surprisingly simple method to get their next clue.
They simply typed the telephone number into a Google search engine, and bingo, up came the telephone number.
The number was contained in a response to an online ad for a flat share. It didn't give a name, but it did list an address close to the murder scene. When they questioned the occupant, they found the mystery lodger had rented a room there, but had moved out just 2 weeks earlier. What seemed very strange is that days after moving into that address, the lodger had still wanted to rent Kevin and Cici's room.
Is this the lodger? Is this the murderer?
This is the man the person renting the room online described to the police. But where was he now?
He made a bit of a mistake, and he gave the occupants a new telephone number, a number that we previously had not had.
With the new phone number, police were now able to trace the mystery lodger, and it led them to the market town of Morpeth, 15 miles north of Newcastle. Armed with a new description, they sent a team to try to find him.
Within literally half an hour, one of the surveillance commanders rings me and says, boss, you're not going to believe this. There's a Chinese guy wearing spectacles, identical to the description.
The next morning, nearly 3 months after the murders, an arrest team arrived at his door. The mystery lodger was finally revealed as 30-year-old Guang Hui Sao.
He never showed any sort of real signs of stress that I've seen before with other suspects. He certainly gave the impression that he wasn't massively concerned with whatever we did have to throw at him, and I think he fully expected to be walking away very shortly.
What Sao didn't know was that police had his trousers and his DNA.
The DNA profile from the swab from Sao's mouth is compared against the waistband of the trousers. Bingo.
These trousers are covered in the blood of Kevin.
When the challenges were getting too much for him, he actually ran out of things he could come up with. He started to laugh.
Why is it making you laugh?
为什么你笑?
我觉得很可笑。
I think this is laughable.
That's laughable.
Extreme arrogance, I would say, and showed that he really did not care about anything that had happened to the victims, I think.
In 2009, the case was brought before Newcastle Crown Court. Thanks to overwhelming evidence, Sao was found guilty by a unanimous verdict of both murders and sentenced to a minimum of 33 years.
What really drove Sao to kill those two people in the circumstances that he did, because this just wasn't a killing, it was an assassination, really, wasn't it? And you don't do that for reasons that are just purely driven, I don't think, by financial motive.
Unless Sao decides to talk, we may never know why he killed Cici and Kevin.
Horror story. Just tell me a little bit more about the reasons, the possible reasons behind all of this.
Well, we know fragments, but not the whole story. The judge said he was convinced this was an execution. He said the couple had in some way crossed a large criminal gang and were punished by them. They were held up as an example and murdered in a cruel and savage way. Now, detectives think the pair were working for a Chinese betting syndicate. It's big business in China, even though gambling is illegal. Just to give you some idea, betting on the English Premier League football is worth around £40 billion in China. So cross them and you're in real trouble.
Cool as a cucumber he looked there when he was in custody. What about this guy, Sao? What more do you know?
Well, very little. He came into the country in 2001 on a student visa. He stayed beyond his welcome, so eventually he was in the country illegally. Was he a contract killer? Probably. Could they prove it? No, even though they travelled to China and investigated links with triad gangs.
And totally devastating for the families of these young students.
Really devastating. Remember, in China there is a one-child policy, so both these families lost their only child, lost their future. Now, Cici's father said it was like the sky falling in on them, and Kevin's mother said we've been sentenced to hell. Absolutely agonising for them.
Thank you, Matthew.